we get f dash x equal to 3x square plus 2px plus q. Now this becomes a quadratic expression, and so we know that the discriminant of this quadratic expression is equal to b square minus 4ac, and so this is equal to 4 times p square minus 4 into 3 times q equal to 4p square minus 12q. Now let us consider different cases. The case number 1 is if the discriminant is less than 0. We see that here the coefficient of x square is 3, which is positive, and hence we can say that this entire expression is greater than 0. This entire expression is f dash x, and hence we can say that f dash x is greater than 0 for all x. And so if f dash x is greater than 0, then fx is an increasing function. Now also we see that when x tends to infinity, fx tends to infinity, and when x tends to minus infinity, fx tends to minus infinity. Thus, the graph of fx intersects the x-axis at only one point. Hence, we can say that there is only one root of fx. Now, if discriminant is less than 0, then this would be the curve of fx, or this could be the curve of fx. Now, depending on the value of r, we could get this curve. If r is positive, we get this curve, and if r is negative, we would get this sort of curve. Thus we can definitely say that if the discriminant is less than 0, then fx is an increasing function for all the values of x, and so it intersects the x-axis at just one point. And depending on the values of r, we can get these two types of curves. If r is greater than 0, then we get a curve that is concave downwards, and if r is negative, then it is concave upwards. Now case number 2 is if we take the discriminant greater than 0, then f dash x will have two real roots. So let us say that alpha and beta are these two roots, and so we can write f dash x equal to 3 times x minus alpha into x minus beta. So f dash x would be greater than 0 when x lies in the interval minus infinity comma alpha to beta comma infinity. So when x lies in this interval, we get f dash x greater than 0, and when x lies in the interval alpha to beta, then f dash x is less than 0. And so we can say that fx is an increasing function in the interval minus infinity comma alpha union beta to infinity, and is a decreasing function in the interval alpha comma beta. Now we get different possibilities, as this is the first possibility where we see that f of alpha is greater than 0 and f of beta is less than 0. And let us say that x1, x2 and x3 are the three roots at which this curve intersects. So f of alpha is greater than 0 and f of beta is less than 0. Now we can get different cases for discriminant less than 0. So the first possibility is this is the curve of y equal to f of x. Now we clearly see that alpha is a point of maxima and beta is a point of minima. So f of alpha is greater than 0 and f of beta is less than 0. And we see that x1, x2, x3 are the three real roots. So we see that x1, x2, x3 are three real roots in this case. The second case is f of alpha is greater than 0 and f of beta is equal to 0. So we see that here x1 is one root and beta corresponds to the equal root. So it has got three roots, x1 and beta comma beta. Next is this case. Here we see that f of alpha is greater than 0 and f of beta is also greater than 0. Now we see that x1 is one root, which is the real root, and two imaginary roots. The next case is f of alpha is less than 0 and f of beta is also less than 0. So again we see that there is one real root and two imaginary roots. And the last case is f of alpha is equal to 0 and f of beta is less than 0. So here we see that we have got three real roots, which are x1, alpha and alpha. Thus in this case we see that there are three real roots with two roots repeated. And case number 3 is if the discriminant is equal to 0. Then we can say that f dash x is equal to 3 times x minus alpha whole square. Now if we integrate both sides with respect to x, we get fx equal to x minus alpha whole cube plus k. Now if we say that k is equal to 0, then we have got 3 real roots. And if k is not equal to 0, then we have got 1 real root. So with this we come to the end of our chapter on application of derivatives. Now I can really understand that we have learned so many concepts in this chapter, but at the same time these concepts are very important as far as IIT JEE entrance exam is concerned and other engineering exams are concerned. So please make sincere efforts to understand all the concepts involved in this chapter and try to master them. And surely for doubts you can visit our site www.topiitcoaching.com. We are committed towards perfecting IIT preparation. Thank you. Hi students, and from here we are going to start studying about the second most important operation in calculus, which is called as the integral calculus. Now have you ever imagined how an electrical engineer determines the length of power cable needed to connect between two substations? Or how does an architect determine the amount of material required to build arcs, domes or such type of artistic models? How does a physicist calculate the center of mass of a sports vehicle for ensuring the safety of the driver? Or how does a statistician calculate the average of sets of data to help and develop different marketing strategies for companies? The answer to all these questions is integration. Yes, integration makes it possible. So this lecture is on indefinite integrals, and this forms the very basis of integral calculus. So let's embark on this wonderful journey of learning integral calculus. Now if we say that a function is differentiable over an interval, then it means that f dash x would exist, and we can very easily find the value of f dash x through the methods of differentiation. Now let's make a twist. If we have been given the value of f dash x, can we find the value of fx? Yes, we can find the value of fx, and this value of fx that could have possibly given us the derivative f dash x are called as the antiderivative. This very process of finding the antiderivatives is called as integration. It is the opposite of differentiation. Now integration as an inverse process of differentiation. Integration is the inverse process of differentiation. This is because if we have been given the derivative, then we find the primitive or the original function using integration. So in differentiation what we do is we have a given function fx and we calculate its differential. But in the process of integration what we do is we take our steps backwards, and from the derivative of fx we try to find the value of fx. So integration is also called as anti-differentiation. Now we know that the differential of sin x is equal to cos of x. So cos x becomes the derived function of sin x. So if I ask you what would be the integral of cos x, then we can surely say that sin x is the integral of cos x, because the differential of sin x is cos x. Thus sin x becomes the integral of cos x. But we also know that the derivative of a constant function is also 0. So if I have any function sin x plus c, and if I differentiate it, then I get the differential as equal to cos x. So the integral of cos x would be sin x plus c. Now as we see that c is a constant and whose value can vary. So as the value of c is variable, we can have infinitely many antiderivatives. Thus we can say that the integral of any function has infinite many values. So we can say that the functions with the same derivative differ only by a constant. So if I say that we have got two functions and who have the same derivative, then these two functions only differ by a constant. Now if I say that dy by dx is equal to f of c, then if we integrate we get y equal to integral of fx into dx, and this integral is nothing but equal to f of x plus c. Your c is called as the constant of integration. So whenever we try to integrate any function, so we always add a constant to the obtained value. Thus the integral of fx is equal to capital Fx plus c. Here once again c is the constant of integration. Now let us try to see the integrals of some standard functions. So if we have the function of the form x to the power of n, where n is any number, then the integral is given by x to the power of n plus 1 divided by n plus 1 plus c. So this is an algebraic expression where fx is equal to x to the power of n. Then the integral of x to the power n is given by x to the power of n plus 1 divided by n plus 1 plus c. C is again the constant of integration. If fx is equal to 1 by x, then its integral is given by ln of modulus x plus c. Modulus x, because this value has always got to be positive for ln to be defined. If fx is e to the power of x, then its integral is e to the power of x plus c. The integral remains the same as fx with the exception of a constant. If fx is equal to a to the power of x, then the integral is given by a to the power of x divided by ln a plus the constant of integration. Now let's see the integral of some trigonometric functions. The integral of sin x is equal to minus cos x plus c. Similarly, the integral of sec square x is tan x plus c. The integral of cos x is sin x plus c. The integral of cosec square x is minus cot x plus c. Integral of tan x is ln of sec x plus c. The integral of sec x into tan x is sec x plus c. The integral of cosec x into cot x is minus cosec x plus c. The integral of cot x is ln of sin x plus c. The integral of sec x is ln of sec x plus tan x plus c, or we can write this expression as ln of modulus of tan of pi by 4 plus x by 2 plus c. And the integral of cosec x is ln of cosec x minus cot x plus c, or ln of modulus of tan of x by 2 plus c. So these were some of the very basic integrals of some very standard functions. Now let us try to see the integrals of some inverse functions. The integral of 1 by under root of 1 minus x square is sin inverse x plus c. The integral of minus 1 by under root of 1 minus x square is minus of cos inverse x plus c. The integral of 1 by 1 plus x square is tan inverse x plus c. The integral of minus 1 by 1 plus x square is minus of cot inverse x plus c. The integral of 1 by x into under root of x square minus 1 is sec inverse x plus c, and the integral of minus 1 by x into under root of x square minus 1 is cosec inverse x plus c. So these were some of the very important integrals, and which you need to learn very thoroughly. Now let us try to see the geometrical meaning of indefinite integrals. So if I say that y is equal to f of x equal to 2, so f of x is a constant function and the value of which is equal to 2. Now if we integrate fx, then we get integral of fx equal to 2x plus c, and let us say that this is equal to capital F of x. Now fx is 2x plus c, so we can say that for different values of c we get different equations of line. Now fx is 2x plus c, so if we put different values of c